Before he became a name etched in automotive history, Carroll Shelby was just a Texas-born chicken farmer with a heart condition and a dangerous appetite for speed. But what set him apart wasn't just his driving skill, it was his refusal to accept the limits placed on him. By the mid-1950s, Shelby had earned respect as a fierce competitor on the racing circuit, including an improbable win at Le Mans in 1959. But when health issues forced him to step out from behind the wheel, he didn't walk away from racing. He reimagined it. He looked at American muscle and European finesse and dared to combine them. The result? The legendary Shelby Cobra, a snarling, tire-smoking roadster that embarrassed Ferrari on the global stage. Shelby wasn't just a builder, he was a disruptor, a rebel wrapped in raw horsepower. While corporate engineers played it safe, Shelby played for keeps. He partnered with Ford to create the GT350 and later the GT40, cars that didn't just win races, but changed the course of motorsport. Yet behind the fame, Shelby remained an enigma. He was charming, elusive, and always one step ahead of the industry. He bounced between projects with Dodge, Ford, even Toyota, always leaving his fingerprint, rarely sticking around long enough to be boxed in. He was a man of innovation and instinct, and more than once, he hinted that some of his best ideas never made it past the workshop. Things too wild for the suits, too powerful for the showroom, too ahead of their time. So when rumors surfaced that after his death, a private garage was opened, revealing something no one, not even the most die-hard collectors, had ever seen, it didn't just surprise people, it felt like a message from Shelby himself. And what was found inside defied everything we thought we knew. Carroll Shelby's garage in Las Vegas is a temple for gearheads. Every polished Cobra, every GT350, every signed poster, it's all carefully curated to honor his legacy. Visitors from around the world have walked its halls, mouths agape at the priceless collection that tells the story of a man who reshaped the American muscle car. But few knew about the other garage, not listed in brochures, not mentioned in interviews, no public photos. This wasn't the Las Vegas display, this was the sanctuary, a private, low-profile structure tucked far from the spotlight, believed to be on private land in rural Texas. A place where Shelby could tinker, stash unfinished ideas, and build without anyone watching. After Carroll's passing in 2012, his estate began the slow process of organizing, preserving, and legally sorting through decades of possessions. While most of his assets were well documented, cars, tools, awards, there was one warehouse that even close confidants had barely entered. The location was sparse, utilitarian, and eerily quiet. And inside that metal building, under fluorescent lights and layers of dust, sat something different. Under a plain gray canvas cover was a car that didn't match anything on record. No Shelby badge, no Ford paperwork, no mention in the official inventory lists. Just a wrinkled paper tag tied to the steering column that read, "EXP Shelby, do not move." At first, they thought it was a forgotten concept, or maybe a modified test mule. But as the canvas was peeled back, one detail became instantly clear. This wasn't just an oddity. It was a ghost. A car that shouldn't exist. Built in total secrecy. Hidden from the world. Until now. What emerged from beneath that dusty canvas was not a Mustang. It wasn't a Cobra. It wasn't even something that resembled any known Shelby project. It was something else. A low, wide, impossibly aggressive coupe. Angular yet muscular, alien yet unmistakably American. Automotive historians and engineers were called in to assess it. Their conclusion? It was likely a mid-1990s prototype, based on a heavily modified Fox body Mustang platform. But that's where the familiarity stopped. The chassis was stretched. The roofline was lowered. The body? Hand-formed aluminum. Not a single piece was mass-produced. But it was what lived underneath that stunned everyone. A twin-turbocharged V8 engine, something Shelby had once flirted with in concept talks, but never formally developed, was bolted to a custom transmission setup with an experimental rear-mounted cooling system. No one had ever seen this configuration used in a Shelby build. There were no VINs that matched, no engineering logs, only crude notes scribbled in marker on various parts. Shelby, EXP V8 Twin, test rack only, and on the firewall, one chilling message: not for production. Those who examined the car closely believed it was a spiritual successor to the Cobra Daytona Coupe, built in secrecy to recapture Shelby's original vision. Raw, unfiltered performance with zero corporate interference. And yet, the car was never spoken about publicly. Never teased. Never registered. Never finished. Why? Because Carroll Shelby knew something the world didn't. He knew that if Ford, or any big brand, got wind of what he was building, they'd shut it down. So he didn't ask for permission. He built it anyway. Carroll Shelby was never afraid of taking on giants, but he also knew when to keep a secret. Throughout his career, he battled with executives who wanted to sanitize his designs, dilute his ideas, and wrap them in corporate packaging. That tension was always there. When working on the early GT 500, Shelby reportedly stormed out of meetings over power restrictions and emissions compliance. During his time consulting on the Dodge Viper, he clashed over weight, safety features, and steering systems. He hated compromise, and he hated being told no. So when it came to this prototype, he didn't even try. According to one former Shelby American fabricator, Carroll called the project his last wild one. He instructed a skeleton crew to build it on nights and weekends. No press, no shop talk, no paper trail. Carroll said, "If Ford doesn't have the guts, I'll do it in my own damn garage." The car was his rebellion, a test bed, a message. In many ways, this car wasn't meant to go public. It was a reminder to himself, and maybe one day to us, that the man who changed American performance never stopped dreaming. Even when the world thought he was done, he was still crafting new legends, one weld at a time. This wasn't just about speed. It was about freedom. And now that this secret build had come to light, it forced everyone to re-examine what we thought we knew about Carroll Shelby. Because maybe his greatest creation was the one he never let us see. Once the mysterious prototype was uncovered, attention turned to the question no one could answer publicly. Who helped Carroll Shelby build this thing? Because no matter how talented he was, Shelby didn't fabricate alone, especially not in his later years. This car required welders, machinists, engineers, people with serious skill. And yet, not a single person had ever spoken of it. No blueprints surfaced, no leaks, nothing in the press. Silence. Until now. Whispers began surfacing from former members of Shelby American and retired fabricators who had worked with Carroll in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Off the record, a few confirmed that something had been underway. A passion project. Off the books. One unnamed source said, "We called it the Ghost. We didn't write anything down. He didn't want it traced." Another claimed that Shelby would personally review parts, test fit components, and discuss aerodynamics in the dead of night, long after the rest of the team had gone home. Why all the secrecy? Because Shelby believed this car was too wild for the corporate suits. It had no airbags, no emission systems, No compromise. It wasn't street legal. It wasn't market ready. It was a statement, not a product. According to insiders, the team used components scrounged from test mules, engineering prototypes, and even discontinued Ford projects. Every bolt had a story. Every weld was a secret handshake. This wasn't a restoration. It was a revolution. And the few who helped build it swore they'd never speak of it until after Carroll was gone. Even now, those who know its origin hesitate to go on record, out of respect, out of loyalty, out of fear that what Shelby built in private might never be understood by the public. With the car now uncovered, Shelby fans and historians are facing a massive dilemma. What do you do with a one-off prototype Shelby didn't want the world to see? Some argue the car should be preserved exactly as is. Dust, tape, handwritten notes and all, like an untouched time capsule. Others want it restored, dyno-tested, and shown to the public. After all, how can you honor a legacy without sharing it? But here's the problem. Ownership is complicated. The car wasn't in any official records, which raises legal questions about intellectual property. It was built using Shelby's name and likely Ford-based parts, but without Ford's authorization. If it ever hit the public road or went to auction, Ford's legal team could step in. And then there's the matter of insurance, emissions, and liability. No paperwork means no registration, no crash testing, no compliance. By legal standards, it's a vehicle that shouldn't exist. Which leads to another theory. Some believe Shelby wanted this car hidden, not because he was ashamed, but because it was a message, not a product. A spiritual successor to the Cobra Daytona coupe. That didn't need validation. In private collector circles, rumors are already swirling. Some estimate its value north of $10 million if it were ever made public. But for now, it remains sealed away, locked inside a legal and ethical standoff. Because when a legend builds something off the record, the story doesn't end when it's found. It begins. At first glance, this hidden car might seem like just another cool footnote in Shelby's long career. But look closer, and it becomes clear that it's so much more. This isn't just about an engine, a body, or a VIN. It's about rebellion. In a time when car culture is increasingly sanitized, when every new model is designed by committee, reviewed by lawyers, and molded for mass appeal, this car stands for everything Carroll Shelby believed in. That's what Shelby did here. No target market, no emissions checklist, no media strategy, just a wild idea, and the means to bring it to life. And in doing so, he left behind more than a car. He left behind a challenge, a whisper to every builder, designer, and dreamer still out there. You don't need permission to make something great. You just need the guts to build it. This prototype is a physical reminder that innovation doesn't come from boardrooms. It comes from garages, from workbenches, from rebels. And as the world becomes more digital, more automated, more corporate, this car might be the last raw scream from an analog era. It doesn't have a press kit. It has a purpose, and that's exactly what Carroll Shelby always stood for. What makes this car so haunting isn't just its rarity or its secrecy, it's what it represents about the man who built it. Carroll Shelby didn't operate by the rule book. He wrote his own. This car, the unnamed, undocumented, unexplained prototype, embodies that philosophy like nothing else he left behind. Because in a world that now tracks every engine code, every trim level, and every press release, here was a vehicle that refused to fit into any box. It wasn't built for SEMA. It wasn't designed for investors. It wasn't meant for marketing. It was personal. A handful of close friends and confidants now say this was one of Shelby's therapy cars. a build he poured himself into quietly as health struggles began to mount. In his later years, Carroll faced heart complications, mobility issues, and bouts of exhaustion, but still, he worked. He didn't go on farewell tours. He didn't film retirement speeches. He went to the garage with a sketch pad, a cutting torch, and his instincts. And that's what makes this car so powerful. Because it's not about horsepower. It's about legacy. It's proof that even when the world thought he had given everything, he had more to give. He just didn't want anyone watching while he gave it. As of today, the prototype remains under tight security, out of public view. It has not been restored. It has not been officially unveiled. And according to sources close to Shelby's estate, there are no immediate plans to display it. Why? Because that's exactly how Carroll would have wanted it. He never built to impress people. He built because it's what his soul demanded. Whether it was the Cobra, the GT350, or this last great ghost, Shelby's passion came from a place of instinct, not instruction. Some collectors and museum curators are already lobbying for its inclusion in the Shelby Heritage Center. Others believe it should remain untouched, left exactly as it was found, like a sealed letter from the past. And then there's a third group, a growing chorus of young builders inspired by this story, who believe this prototype should be documented not just as a physical object, but as a symbol of what it means to build without fear. Some have even started calling it the Black File car, a nod to the kind of classified project nobody's supposed to know about. And maybe that's what Carroll wanted all along. Not mass production, not legacy products. Just a spark. An idea left behind in steel and rubber, waiting for the right person to pick it up and run with it. In the end, this story isn't just about one car, it's about what that car means. Carroll Shelby changed the world with cars that screamed down racetracks, cracked tires loose on city streets, and graced the covers of magazines across the globe. But this final build, the hidden one, the forbidden one, whispers instead of roars. It whispers a truth most of us forget, that the most powerful creations often aren't made in the spotlight. They're made in silence, behind closed doors, in garages where the only deadline is death and the only approval needed is your own. This prototype wasn't born of money. It wasn't born of strategy. It was born of a man with fire in his chest and tools in his hand, until the very end. And now that it's been found, we're forced to ask, what other legends are still out there, waiting under dust and shadows? Because if Carroll Shelby, a man who gave us so much, still had one more secret to show us, then maybe greatness never really dies. It just hides, waiting for the door to be opened.